Hello, my name is Jonna Basil, and this is my presentation entitled Changing the World with Giftedness. This presentation will highlight common misconceptions around giftedness, characteristics of giftedness, the social and emotional needs of gifted students, and understanding the reasons for underachievement. I teach high school, so I have a passion for gifted high school students. By the time these students reach high school, I feel as though they are often forgotten about. They still possess gifted qualities, and I feel like this is where some of the challenges are lost for these students. With that being said, this presentation will be based on secondary education. Let's get started. Having a passion for gifted students can empower them and help them to see the change that they can make in the world. I have a passion for gifted students because I was one who appreciated challenges and the time my gifted coordinator took to make sure that I was doing my absolute best to prepare for college. Those are the teachers who are remembered for a lifetime. Here's today's plan for success. Recognizing common myths about giftedness, practices to avoid them, characteristics and signs to look for when working for a potentially gifted student, meeting social and emotional needs of gifted students, and underachievement. 5 common myths surrounding giftedness. Not everything you hear about giftedness is truthful. Myth number 1, gifted students do not need help. They'll be fine. The famous quote, "They'll be fine," is what hurts those students the most. Gifted students are far from fine. Most gifted students are very far ahead of their peers, and they may be suffering from inadequate feelings about fitting in or having problems that they are too afraid to ask about because they are labeled as gifted. These students are often compared to their non-gifted peers, so it's a big weight on their shoulders. They're not perfect, and they're not always fine. Myth number 2, all students are challenged. Teachers do not challenge all students. A lot of the times, teachers don't have the adequate training or resources to accommodate these types of students. Teachers may think they're challenging all students, but have failed to differentiate instruction for gifted students. This is where they may feel bored, frustrated, and it also can lead to underachievement. So always have something challenging for the student to do when they finish work, a challenging assignment, puzzle, or an organization project. We always think about differentiating for students of low abilities, but we tend to not think about the students with high abilities. Myth number 3, bad grades means not gifted. This is very inaccurate because there are several things that can contribute to bad grades in gifted students. So underachievement is a topic that we'll be discussing later on in the presentation, but a brief definition of that is when the child's full potential is not being met. And there are several different reasons for that. Student could be bored with the non-challenging material. They could be stooping down to other students' levels, or they could be a twice exceptional student. Myth number 4, gifted students are happy at school. Not all gifted students are happy. They're not all socially well-rounded. They're very prone to having social needs as well as emotional needs in the classroom. Gifted students are far from perfect, and we will be discussing some of those needs further on in the presentation. Myth number 5, gifted students cannot have disabilities. I have personal experience with a student who is diagnosed with autism and is still classified as gifted, so this is where twice exceptional comes in. He displays all of the characteristics and is extremely smart. Often I see the student written off by his teachers and peers who just do not seem to understand him to the fullest extent. He was placed in a special education classroom and it hurts his self-esteem, social life, and learning abilities. His disability definitely strengthens his giftedness, and he's an amazing and fun student to have in class. So the twice exceptional students are students who are gifted, but they also have a disability, and it's not always autism. It can be ADHD, sensory problems, dyslexia, or any other type of learning. Here are some of the characteristics of gifted students. They are usually exceptional readers. They're avid readers. They have large vocabularies. A lot of the times it's just what they grew up doing, so they just continue to do it through their education. A lot of them always have a book in their hand, or you can just tell through their reading comprehension abilities and the way that they use certain words in speech. Individualism. These gifted students would rather work by themselves than with classmates. A lot of the times their minds run a lot faster than their peers, so they're able to get better exceptional work down if they just work by themselves, or they would rather work with an adult, would rather speak with an adult, somebody who is on their playing field. Sometimes they have unique and wide interests. I have personal experience with my gifted student in my class. He has a very wide interest and a very large knowledge of this interest, and it is movies. He loves movies. He can pull out movie quotes that are parallel to what we're learning, the lesson that we're learning. He can pull out plots from movies from the 40s, which is just really cool, and the students in the class really enjoy when he can do that for them. He really moves the lesson along. And the last topic is intensities, and I feel like intensities are very important to talk about. So here, intensities. Dabrowski's research says that intensities come from the emotional depth of a student. He called them superstimulation or overexcitabilities. Students may have more than one, but one may stand out more than the others. Because these students are so in touch with the intellectual depth, they display overexcitabilities that can be seen as positive or negative. Dabrowski has labeled 5 different types of overexcitabilities: psychomotor, sensual, imagination, intellectual, and emotional sensitivity. Psychomotor is when the students have to be moving around. Sensual is when students who are bothered by certain smells, sounds, or textures, so the way that they are sitting in the desk or the way that their sock is against their foot. Imagination are students who are very creative. They live in fantasy worlds. They often have imaginary friends when they're younger. These are students who are just overly creative. Intellectual overexcitability is when students who want to know more, they're always asking questions, they never satisfy with a simple answer. And these students may seem to, cause a disruption, and that may be seen as negative. But in this case, they're really just very curious and trying to get the most that they can out of your class. Emotional sensitivity are students who are very sensitive to other people's moods, things that are happening within the world that they can't change. So the news might bother them, especially now in 2020. I think it's just not very good for these types of students' mental health to have to watch the news and see all this that's happening. It can really bother these types of students. This can cause an emotional outburst as well in class and can also be perceived as negative. So we have to remember that just because the student seems to be blurting out in class or causing a distraction, it doesn't mean that they actually intend to do that. Just give these students some space, let them go to the hall or a safe place to calm down, and discuss with the rest of the class that it's very normal to feel these types of intensities and feel these emotions deeper than others. Counseling may be suggested for overexcitabilities. However, the biggest thing is the significant people in that student's life, whether it be parents, grandparents, teachers, counselors, coaches, any people in their life need to be accepting of their overexcitabilities. So they need to be aware of it, they need to talk with them, and they need to normalize it with them and just make them feel like it's normal that they feel the type of feelings that they do. A big social and emotional need of gifted students, especially in high school, is where they develop kind of anxiety and the perfectionism aspect of giftedness. So they already have a heightened sense of emotions. They're already compared to all of their other non-gifted students. So it's a big weight to have on their shoulders. They might have social anxiety among peers who are not as gifted as them, who have low abilities. They feel like they might be perceived as like a nerd, or they might be bullied because they're smart. And they can also have fear of failure, which goes into perfectionism. I was definitely one of these students who had the social and emotional needs, and I didn't know that it was normal to feel like this as a gifted student. So it was really, really eye-opening to be able to research all of these different types of emotional and social needs. So how can we help? A lot of the time support groups are used to discuss their needs, to discuss students' needs with mentors or other students who share their needs. Students need teachers and parents to be mentors. They need parents and teachers to be on their side, to be accepting of their needs and to help them meet their needs. We also need to normalize failure. Failure is normal. Talk about our failure. Give them our own experiences with failure. Let them know that they're not the only person on the face of the earth that's going to fail. But give them the motivation to get back up and try again and try to succeed. And if they fail again, they fail again. They just have to get back up and try to succeed. Underachievement. So here's some peer influence. So when I think of peer pressure, we usually think of underage drinking or drugs. But in this case, a lot of the times, kids are mean. Kids are mean. They bully kids because they're smart. And being smart isn't cool. I'll get made fun of if I study. My friends aren't smart, so I don't want to be. So that's kind of the things that go through these students' minds. And that's how they're peer pressured into not studying or not doing well on tests or not doing their best on activities, not showing their full potential. Adolescent relationships are very important in the high school years. They have an impact on the behavior of them and how they act, and especially how they learn. Here's some research here. 66% of students named peer pressure or attitude of the other kids, including friends, as the primary force against getting good grades. So, like I said before, these kids are peer pressuring other students into not studying or not doing their best because, they tell them it's not cool. Here is another part of underachievement. It's when students are gifted, but they're also part of a minority. So underachievement can also come from just not feeling like they fit in. Gifted minority students often display signs of underachievement. This can come from just not feeling like they fit in, or that they might be bullied for their race, ethnicity, social group. They might be shy because they're the only one of them in their class. And other times, they can even take it as far as being a behavior problem. So the overwhelming nature of being the minority in the class or school can really hold back a person's giftedness. The minorities that could be represented where underachievement can happen are Hispanic, African American, even female students can feel this, LGBTQ, Native Americans, or any ethnic/social group that is different from the majority of the school. This really might bother students enough into just shutting down and not being themselves and not working to their fullest potential. All right, boredom is a big component of underachievement. Boredom results in not being challenged. This happens most of the time in high-ability, gifted students. Sometimes teachers do not have the resources or training to be able to stimulate and challenge our gifted students enough. This results in disengagement, which can bring on behavioral issues or bad grades. High school is that age where good students become bogged down with life, social problems, if they're not being challenged, if they're frustrated, and their grades will definitely start to show that. So here are some interventions that we can take a hold of. Here. All right, so this is how some teachers might get involved other than collaboration. They can talk about student interests, make sure that we know all about our students and what they like, incorporate the activities, make them be able to choose what they want to do. Prepare differentiated lessons. Always have a backup activity that takes the lesson up a notch. Offer up the most difficult problem or activity first. And design pre-tests. So see where the students are. If the student makes a 90% or higher, take the lesson up a notch. And most importantly, motivate your precious high school students. They need all of the support and guidance they can get. You never know what a child is going through at home. So make sure school is a safe place for learning, questioning, curiosity, advancement, and succeeding when they walk through the doors. Consider everything you have learned today and accept who these kids are. Help them change the world with their giftedness, like we know that they can. Here are some references, and thank you all for listening. First, collaboration. I feel like it is a very big deal for teachers to collaborate with each other, whether it be after school, during school, before school, to team teach. So team teaching is when teachers collaborate to differentiate instruction and work together to purposely and cooperatively help students learn, in this case, gifted students. So a group of teachers may see a gifted student falling behind, may see several gifted students falling behind. So what they might do is group these students together and come up with ways that might challenge these students and might make school better. If a student is falling under achievement and the teachers don't really know what's going on, but one teacher in the group has found something that student enjoys or that student does well at. So this is where team teaching is really helpful, because these teachers can come together and can talk about things like that. One thing that teachers can really do is stations. So stations are very effective. They're challenging, they hold motivation, and they keep students interested. So they are pretty hard to be able to really do in class. It's hard to create these. And team teaching would be a way for these teachers to collaborate and come up with different stations that might hold these students'